as I say, my family, I don't know how far back we go in the mountains of western North Carolina, but I think we go back to the North Carolina-thals. We've been there a long time. But Tennessee was never home to my mama. My dad didn't matter to him where he was. As long as he had his work and his horses, he was happy. Didn't matter where he was. But my mother was a North Carolina mountain gal, and her family, she was one of 7 children, and they were all boys except for 6. Just checking to see if you're still with me. All right. Uh, I don't know of a closer family. My aunts and uncles were all like parents to me, and my cousins were all like siblings. We were very close. So, at least every other weekend, and sometimes every weekend for a while, we'd take stretches of it. We'd get ready to go to school on Friday, my older brother Eddie and I, and my mother would say, "Pack your suitcase, we're going home." And so my dad would meet us in the old Ford Fairlane, and we'd throw our suitcases in the car and get in, and we'd go from Morristown, Tennessee to Newport, and from Newport to Del Rio, and from Del Rio to Hot Springs, and from Hot Springs to Marshall, and from Marshall to Asheville, and from Asheville to West Asheville, and then out past Candler to the Hominy Valley where my mother's people are from. They all lived within a 5-mile radius. And it was always all of us together. Every Saturday, everybody came. No matter whose house it was at, we had picnics in the yard. We had dinner on the ground, all that stuff. Just extremely close family. Now, my mother's father was quite a character. I never knew him. He died in 1941, and I wasn't born to 48, but I knew everything about him. And the reason I did was stories. Everybody told stories about him. He was a real character. His name was Motorcycle Eddie Cole. Had a 1917 Indian V-twin that people said, "Oh, your granddaddy'd ride that thing everywhere he went." Now, the reason I knew so much about him is I knew his very best friend, an old man by the name of Stover Mason. Now, Stover and my granddaddy were born on adjoining farms in a hollow in the mountains up there, 3 days apart, so they were like blood brothers. They did everything together until the day that my granddaddy was killed in a car accident. Motorcycle Eddie killed in an A model. Doesn't make sense, does it? But Stover would tell me all these stories about my granddaddy. And when I was 10 years old, I was convinced that I was born 80 years late. Because when I was 10, Stover was 80, and I was supposed to have been the third musketeer with that bunch. I would have given anything to have been born 80 years before I was. But anyway, Stover would haul me all over the mountains in an old 1.5-ton international truck and introduce me to everybody that he knew, which was hundreds of people. He would take me in so I could watch people cane chair bottoms. He would take me and I could watch people make horseshoes. He would take me and I could watch women make baskets. All the old mountain crafts, he knew the people that were still doing it, and he'd take me everywhere and say, "Now watch how they do this." It was wonderful. But now his favorite thing in the world was fox hunting. Now, Appalachian fox hunting ain't got a thing in the world to do with this stuff they do down there in the Shenandoah Valley back in the old days, you know. It doesn't involve velvet jackets and thoroughbred horses, I can tell you that. What Appalachian fox hunting is you get a pack of walker dogs, walker hounds, you put them in the back of your old flat-fendered Willis Jeep, and you drive up the mountain as far as it'll go, and then you turn the dogs loose and say, "Go find old Wiley." And they go off down through the woods looking for the scent of a fox. And then you take your blankets and your coffee pot, and you go to the top of the mountain and build a fire. And once the fire gets going and you got your coffee pot on, you start telling lies. Oh, it's wonderful. Now, those old men they were the best storytellers in the world. Oh, it was wonderful. Now, what happened was, in a fox hunt, they called it a fox race because I never heard of a pack of Walker hounds catching a fox. They never got close enough to a fox to catch it because the fox was in his backyard and his IQ is about 200 points higher. Now, those dogs will chase that fox anywhere he leads them. There's stories about foxes outsmarting dogs, like they'll lead them down to the end of a split rail fence. Then they'll jump on the fence and pass the dogs up there going the other way, and the dogs will get to the end of the fence and go, where'd he go? You know. And the fox knows where every hiding hole in the whole mountain is, and he enjoys it as much as the dogs do. Now, the reason they called it a fox race was not that the dogs were racing the fox or vice versa. The dogs were racing each other. See, so you take your dogs and I take my dogs, and we turn them loose. Now, let's see whose dog is the best. And the way they can tell what's going on is those dogs will be out there, and you don't hear a thing until they strike the scent of a fox. And then the one that smells that fox the first time will go like that, and it's on. Here they go. And they've all got different voices, just like you can tell your kids apart back there in the bedroom hollering at one another. You can tell which one started it. Those dogs all got different voices. You'll hear, and and those boys sitting up there by the campfire, they call that the music of the fox race. Now, as soon as those dogs catch a scent and they start that singing, they call it the music of the fox race. Like I said, all the storytelling stops because now those old men are like, and they can call that fox race who's first, second, third, fourth, fifth place, and your poor little old girl's way there in the back. They can call that just like that man at Santa Anita can call a thoroughbred race. Oh, and I remember the first time I ever heard the music of the fox race. My good friend Sam Burton, World War II veteran, when I was 10, Sam was 40 and Stover was 80. Tom Harmon was about Stover's age, and that was sort of the four of us that hunted a lot. Sam had the best foxhounds of western North Carolina. Well, we got up there on the mountain and got the fire and the coffee going, and those old men started a line. It was great. I was sitting there just wide-eyed going, my mouth hanging open. Oh, but then off in the distance, after about an hour, we heard, there they went. And those old men just, and their eyes just about glazed over. They were just in the middle of it. And I was standing there looking at those old men wondering, what's wrong with these guys? Look at them. They look like they're just asleep. Well, they were listening to the music of the fox race. And Sam Burton glanced down at me and he said, son, how you like that music? And I said, Sam, I can't hear the music for your dogs barking. But it became my favorite song in the world. And here's a song about those old men. Well, I spent a lot of time around a campfire, spinning yarns and listening to the songs of hounds. And I've spent a lot of time around tall buildings, and I don't mind telling you what I have found. I found that wood smoke and laughter at a good joke, in the company of legendary liars, and a story well recited by a fire has delighted both young and old since we discovered fire. Well, it was me and Sam and Stover and Tom Harmon round a fire with those old men when I was a kid, and their stories on the wind like leaves of autumn. Then Stover said, son, you tell us a story. And I did. 'Cause I knew that wood smoke and laughter at a good joke, in the company of legendary liars, and a story well recited by a fire has delighted both young and old since we discovered fire. So some evening when the moon is big and shining, you don't need foxhounds, all you need's a kid. Build a fire if it's only in the backyard, and then tell stories and you'll both be glad you did. You'll find with wood smoke and laughter at a good joke, you too can be a legendary liar, because a story well recited by a fire has delighted both young and old since we discovered fire. Anybody got a match?